So this week in music, we quickly revisited the key concepts and strands in music. So we have 3 strands for New South Wales Board of Studies music. We have performing, organising sounds and listening. And this is achieved through musical concepts such as duration, pitch, dynamics, tone, colour and structure. And also through repertoire such as vocal music, instrument music, student composition and movement. So having already explored those, this week we spent a bit more time focusing on tuned versus untuned percussion. And I wanted today to explore the benefits and implications of both of these sets of instruments in the classroom. So first of all, untuned percussion. That's something that I had a lot of experience with at school. So that's like the shakers, maracas, the tambourines, the castanets. So all of the instruments that don't have a tone or a pitch to them. So they just take them as they are. So I feel like these are a really easy way to integrate into the classroom. You don't really need to know anything about tone or scales or anything like that. It's more about timing and rhythm. So I feel like it's a very accessible instrument for all classes, and often these instruments are cheaper, which unfortunately is often a deciding factor in schools. So as opposed to untuned percussion, we also have tuned percussion. So the most common instrument that you would be using in a school is either a pitch block or a xylophone or a glockenspiel. So these instruments I did use in primary school, not very often. It was only with a trained music teacher who had quite a bit of background knowledge. I feel like this isn't as accessible to teachers who aren't confident in musical background. I do not have a musical background. As you know, I have a dance background. However, this lesson showed how to integrate this within the classroom without feeling too nervous about using tuned instruments. So the example we used was the track Happy, which we thought was very lyrically appropriate. It's not too difficult for students, they can sing it. And we can also choreograph a routine, or we could integrate our tuned instruments, which I'm focusing on today. So for our tuned version of Happy, there are only really 4 notes that you need to know how to play, which is F, E, B flat and C. So if you have your xylophone or your glockenspiel, you can take off any of the blocks that you don't need, and then they can hit the notes that they need to be playing for the tune of the song. So I felt like this is really accessible, it's very easy, it's not scary, and we have sheet music and you can annotate the letters corresponding to the notes on the bar, and it's very user-friendly. So I feel like this is very beneficial in teaching tuned instruments in the classroom. So in addition to tuned and untuned instruments, we also mentioned a little bit about ORF and ORF lessons. So I did a bit of research into that, and I've found that ORF is a framework for teaching a music lesson. And I feel like it's very relatable to what I believe I will be doing in the classroom. So it focuses on a form of literacy, so either creating a soundscape for a story or making your response to a poem and the feelings that you feel in the poem. So I feel like it's a very integrated way of teaching music, so it has clear links to literacy in KLLAs. So for our next lesson we focused on singing, which is probably the scariest part of me for this whole degree so far. I can't carry a tune in my opinion, I'm not a very good singer, but I did love the lesson, and I think that is the main thing that I should have taken away from that lesson today. So I chose to focus on how teachers can make singing feel exciting and fun and not a nerve-wracking experience for their class. I believe enthusiasm is the key. If you're excited to sing and you're not afraid to sing, then your students are going to feel just the same. Encourage your kids to take risks and just introduce it from kindergarten. Don't introduce it as this big scary thing. Just integrate it within your class and keep it going throughout all the years. The practical implication for me as a teacher is to explore how we could integrate singing within a class. So I've chosen to focus on the song Calypso that we learnt in the tutorial and the way that I would integrate it in the classroom. First of all, Calypso, it's an easy song. It's suitable for stage 1, so it's repetitive. You can do it in 2 parts, or you can start with all together. It's within the pentatonic scale, so it's not too high for children of that age to sing. It's really rhythmically, it's a little bit syncopated, but it's pretty manageable for that age group. So first of all, lead the way. So you start singing and they will be happy to join in. So you can have the words up on the interactive whiteboard, or you can have the words on paper for the kids to read. Most importantly, have a backing track. Don't just sing by yourself. Have a backing track to help you to guide your rhythm and to make it less daunting for the students to join in. So as a big group, start singing the words. Encourage them to join in when they feel ready. Don't force them to. And just get comfortable with the lyrics and the rhythm first. From there, you could integrate uses of different rounds. Appropriate, it's not challenging. As some people are singing the verse and others can be singing the chorus, so the O-O Calypso. From there, you would either record it or record it on GarageBand. So you can create your electronic file of the students singing, and you can also choreograph students can choreograph their own dance to go with it, often using the words as a prompt. And we can also integrate ICT by filming the students as they're dancing, and you already have your soundtrack. So you could debut the film in a school assembly, you could use it in the classroom as a further learning tool, or we can create a live performance and do it for parents, or you can send it home to show what the kids have been working on. So there's plenty of avenues. That's just some of my ideas for stage 1 using Calypso. So in addition to Calypso, I've included the routine that we learnt and also the lyrics. You can buy the lyrics and buy the backing track. I've included my own backing track that I created in GarageBand, which is a great lesson that the students could get involved with. So enjoy.
Calypso left, Calypso right, Calypso party into the night. Oh, oh, Calypso. Oh, oh, Calypso, oh, oh, Calypso, Calypso, oh, oh.
Anyone, this is a makeup task. I missed the tutorial for this lesson. It was terrible, terrible storms. All trains were cancelled and I had no way of getting into the city or out of the city. So there was no getting to uni today. So in place of that, I did some readings and I looked up a technique. Bear with me. I need to look at it to pronounce it. Gesamtkunstwerk. So it's a German word, but it essentially is describing a total artwork. So it's a way of integrating a lot of the key concepts in music to create a whole artwork in the end. So a person named Kellett designed a unit of work or a lesson focusing on this whole artwork and conducted it with a kindergarten class, and I feel like it's just such a rich experience and I definitely would look into integrating this in my classroom. So I'll give you a brief rundown of what it included. So the first thing was colour. So the aim of this whole task is to build confidence, take it in easy steps. It's not this mammoth task, it's composed of a lot of different little steps. So the first one was colour, and students were given songs to listen to, and then there was no wrong answers. They had to explain what colour they felt represented the song and why, justify their choices. So get them to critically think why they're feeling the way that they do, and just being aware of what the composer's intent was according to them. So for example, music, so from Vivaldi's suite, so students listen to the piece of music and respond with the colour that they think is appropriate. So surprisingly enough, in this study, a lot of students chose green and yellow for serene and natural and calm and sunny, so all these different reasons. And then you'd offer it with a contrasting piece of music. So following that, they looked at shape. So they used the Carnival of the Animals suite, and without telling students what the animals were, the students were given pieces of music to listen to, and in front of them they had a sheet of paper with about 4 different animals, and they had to circle the one that they felt best represented the piece of music, and that process was repeated. So for example, they listened to the elephant or the kangaroo or the swan. So again, they had to justify why they chose the animal they did, whether they felt it represented the movement that the animals did, or whether they felt it was big like the elephant, or just their way of thinking and introducing new terminology through their justifications. So the next thing they focused on was environment. So students were then given a debrief about what each song was, what animal the composer thought it was, not what animal it should be. So the composer has his intent, the students can interpret it completely different. It's not wrong, this is just what the composer felt as he was making it. So make that really clear. So students got to choose their animal and then they had to think about what colour they felt the music represented. So from there, the students were given a heap of textures to choose from, and they had to choose the colour that they felt represented the animal and create an environment and a collage of the animal and its environment. So it could be lots of zigzags, it could be very smooth and flowy and wavy like the ocean. So there was a lot of things to choose from. The students had to actively make decisions and justify. Following that, students created soundscapes and also movement sequences, and at the end of the whole unit, parents were invited to come into the classroom and see what the students have been working on. So that is their whole work. So they've got all their artworks, they have their soundscape, they have the movements they've created, and it's a very valuable and rich learning experience, I think. It's not a superficial appreciation of the music, it's really looking into the composer's intent and just the choices you make when making music. Classical music's good. Don't tell them what the title is, because then it's influencing what they are picking for colours. If you don't want to use classical music, then by all means use more modern music, perhaps take away the lyrics, and try and go for something that they wouldn't be familiar with. Finally, in music, we looked at appreciation, which is I looked at bridging the gap between students and music. So sometimes music appreciation really sparks that, oh, we'll have to listen to Beethoven, we'll have to listen to Mozart. So listening to the famous classics, but music is music, music's everywhere. So you really need to learn to maybe go outside what you're comfortable. So I chose to look into appreciating rap in a primary classroom. I feel like a lot of students in the class will enjoy it. So on top of making your own rap, which we have focused on in the past, I'm not addressing that today, I think it's important to try and find age-appropriate raps that you can concentrate on in class, that there's A, no swearing, and B, that the theme is accessible to students of our age in the primary setting. So I've included a link down below that has a list of songs that are appropriate for appreciating rap, and the way that we can do that in the classroom as well. So I feel like that's very beneficial for my teaching practices in the future, which is important in music. So to begin appreciation, we listened to 2 key songs. The first one was Danny Elfman's The Ice Dance from Edward Scissorhands. Unfortunately for the exercise, I am quite familiar with that piece of music. I've used it for choreographing routines and things like that. And the second one was Hedwig's theme from Harry Potter. So we looked at ways that we could incorporate appreciation in the classroom by using those songs. So you can really prompt discussion and prompt what you want your students to be looking at. So that could include, what instrument do you hear first? What family of instruments in the orchestra do you hear in this song? It could be, what do you picture when you hear this song? So do you feel cold? Do you feel hot? Does it feel magical? It's really up to interpretation, and I feel like, yeah, it's an environment where you have to have eyes closed, lights off, really focusing on the song without any distractions. Particularly for younger children, don't exceed over a minute, so do it in small increments and revisit the song while you're talking about it, and point out, oh, so and so said they felt like this sounded like this, let's go back and listen, can you hear what they're saying? So it's not a process where you listen to a 5-minute song and then they have to talk about it. So take it easy, do it in small pieces. We also focused on how do we incorporate music into other KLAs. I feel like science is often avoided by a lot of people who like the art side of the curriculum, but there is a clear link between arts and science. So when talking about music, you've got how length and how width affects sound waves. We can focus on sound waves. We can focus on volume and how different volume containers make different sounds, and look into the scientific principles behind that. So there's such a clear link between science and music, and I feel like that's so beneficial to students who often feel they can't access either the science side of things or the music side of things. So that's why I chose to focus on science. I feel like they're often considered polar opposites, but they're very complementary when you think about it. So it's all about how you integrate it in the classroom, have value for both. So finally, for my last music reflection, I looked at bridging the gap between students and music. So sometimes music appreciation really sparks that, oh, we'll have to listen to Beethoven, we'll have to listen to Mozart. So listening to the famous classics, but music is music, music's everywhere. So you really need to learn to maybe go outside what you're comfortable. So I chose to look into appreciating rap in a primary classroom. I feel like a lot of students in the class will enjoy it. So on top of making your own rap, which we have focused on in the past, I'm not addressing that today, I think it's important to try and find age-appropriate raps that you can concentrate on in class, that there's A, no swearing, and B, that the theme is accessible to students of our age in the primary setting. So I've included a link down below that has a list of songs that are appropriate for appreciating rap, and the way that we can do that in the classroom as well. So I feel like that's very beneficial for my teaching practices in the future. Hi everyone, so as you can see, we are doing dance today. So I am a dance teacher, however throughout this degree I've come to recognise the differences between dance at school and dance outside of school, with the biggest difference being that not all children want to do dance at primary school, whereas everyone at my studio are there because they want to. So I feel like, keeping that in mind, it's important for me to consider how to engage students who perhaps are a bit reluctant or a bit timid in approaching dance in the classroom. We revisited the elements of dance, which are space, time, dynamics, action, relationship, and structure. And we focused on how we use the body and composition in dance. I felt like the activity we had was a really easy way to engage students in the classroom, particularly, as I said earlier, students who are a bit reluctant. So that was the dice game. So you had a chart with 6 basic steps. So we had twist, clap, leap, stamp, swing, and jump. And students were each given a turn at rolling the dice, and whatever number they got on the die corresponded to the chart. and then that was the step that they had to start with first. So I feel like that's a really easy way to engage all students in the classroom. We also looked at shapes and way of representing these shapes in our body, in the shapes that we do and the movements that we do. So for example, we had an arrow, wall, ball and screw. So screw, for example, is a twisting motion. Ball, you would be in, or you may be rolling. So there were different interpretations. It's all very open. Whatever the student does, it's not wrong. It's their personal interpretation. So in addition to looking at what we did in class, I've done a bit of research and I've found a really great resource. So I've included a link down below. It's by Arts Alive Canada, and it's focusing on dance composition. So what it is, it's an interactive website, and there's a start, middle and an end of the composition. So at the start you would choose your starting pose for your animated dancer, and you click on the pose that you would like. There's about 8 to choose from, and you have a little preview in the corner so you can see what your dancer is doing and experiment with what you like. Followed by the center, where you can pick about 6 different combinations and then an ending, and you have multiple songs to put it to change the intent and things like that. So I think it's again a fun and safe way for students to consider composition in dance and really think about the composer's intent, so the choreographer's intent for the dance that they've made. So you can experiment with that either in real life or on ICT using this resource. So I think that was really valuable. Today we focused on dynamics, so the how of dancing. So we really played around with the different dynamics that you could bring to a movement, be it sharp or sustained or flowy. So different ways that we did that. First of all, we learnt, we played Follow the Leader. And throughout the line, each person had a different dynamic and they had to demonstrate that movement. So it's all about improvisation and experimenting and just becoming familiar with the different movements and feelings. Following that, we did some progressions, and each group were given a couple of keywords to focus on, and that's what they had to create. So I felt like that's very valuable for the students to create their own movements based on their understanding. And finally, we also focused on the musical Matilda, using a piece by Tim Minchin, the composer, and that was a very sharp, dynamic dance. So there was a lot of sharp, syncopated movements. There was a couple of slow ones, like the slow head roll, but a lot of it was sharp clicking and jumps around and things like that. So I feel like this is an important teaching point, that you can yourself choreograph if you're comfortable with it, and have a base routine, and then students can go away and they can play with it and they can change the different dynamics. So you could have given them an entirely different piece of music and said, make this dance sustained and soft. And you can give it to another student and say, make this sharp and strong. And so we could play around. And I feel like that would be a very valuable exercise for students. Finally, I looked a lot into the importance of feedback, which I felt was a key part of that lesson. Feedback for me, I think constantly throughout the lesson, the teacher should be giving feedback. In addition to that, I think it's important that students also engage in peer feedback. I believe that by talking about it and using the right terms, they're becoming more aware and they're learning, as well as making what they're doing meaningful if their peers are going to be watching and appreciating and giving feedback on what they've done. So it's a good idea to scaffold your feedback. So you don't want students just to say, yeah, it was good, I like that dance. So in order to do that, you need to give them the language and the tools. So it would be a good idea either to model it yourself or say, okay, today we're focusing on the dynamics. I want you to talk about what dynamics you saw in the dance. And you can put it up on the board. You could give them a list of keywords just to help guide and structure their feedback as they become more comfortable, or as you move into the older years. Then hopefully your students should be more capable without that scaffolding there. But it's good to start from a young age and really have students engaging in peer feedback. All the different ways that you could change your movement. So in dance, for our third lesson, we focused a lot on the body in space. So where can we go in space? A key idea for us this time was advance and retreat. So instantly most people think of moving forwards and backwards. It's often quite a confrontational feeling, so we often had groups facing each other and one group advancing and one retreating, or vice versa. And it was very interesting for me to see people's different interpretations in class. I've included a video coming up now, which is our group's composition of advance and retreat. So what happened was we had a base dance that we built from, and then we changed that around in terms of structure and dynamic to reflect what we felt advance and retreat looked like. So I'll draw your attention at the beginning to the starting pose. We tried to make it interesting by changing our levels, so playing around with space. So we had some people starting low, some people starting a bit higher, particularly the boys' side were higher than the girls' side. We did intentionally make it boys versus girls. We thought that was an interesting way to separate it instead of just having mixed groups. And so like a battle of the sexes kind of thing, I suppose. And it was, we played around with our floor pattern. We started on a diagonal, which I believe we're the only group to do that. So we traveled on the diagonal. We changed levels up and down. We tried to just make it an interesting routine. So I'll leave it for you to watch. Enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed our dance. An important thing to reflect on after watching the dance, we really focused on the way that we problem solved when making this dance. So Iris went around and she listened to everyone's conversations. So there was a lot of words like, why don't we, why could we, should we do this, what do you think? So there's a lot of collaborative efforts. And we really focused on what were people's motivations in the dance. Was it, okay, we have 2 counts of 8 we need to get done, or was it more, okay, I believe advance and retreat should look like this, or was it reflecting the music? So the music was from The Lion King, so some people recreated the story of The Lion King within their advance and retreat routine. So it's really interesting to look at how dance can be a stimulus for problem solving and the different ways we can do that in the classroom. So I did a little bit of research into this, and there's a article about preschoolers and their critical thinking while engaging in dance. So it is such a valuable tool, and it showed that as students were making dances and learning dances and making them together, they were engaging in really constructive conversations, and it was all about problem solving and what should we do next. So it was a very interesting read, and it's nice to see how valuable dance is in the preschool setting as well as primary school. So for our final dance lesson, it was a really insight into the whole structure of what we'd done over the past couple of years. So it's all about, what do I do? Why am I teaching it? How do I do it? Where do I get the ideas from, and when can I do it? So it's all about implementing dance within a crowded curriculum. So first of all, what would you do in a dance? So it's all about warming up to start off with, including an opportunity for improvisation, followed by developing a routine or developing some work, and then appreciating and performing at the end. So that should be your key structure of a dance lesson. There's our key elements as to why we should be teaching this. So we have our strands and our body core, so our skills. So we have flexibility, endurance, stamina, coordination, and it's just an invaluable tool. There's so many different reasons why. So I've included a table down below made by Grace Connell, and that includes a lot of our discussion around this topic. So how do I do it? You would incorporate the elements of dance. So again, that was space, times, dynamic, action, structure, and relationships. And where do you get the ideas from? Stimuli can come from anywhere. So it could be oral, you could be listening to the music. It could be visual, you might have a picture. It could be ideational. You could be looking at an image or a story. It could be tactile. So there was a really great lesson idea about students having their eyes closed and feeling a shell, not knowing what it was, and creating a dance based on the tactile, so based on the feel of the shell. So it was spiky, it went in and it went out, and it was smooth in some parts and rough in other parts. So the students tried to mimic that in their dance, which I think is a really great idea that I'll be taking into the classroom. In addition to that, there's also kinesthetic, so the actual feeling of the dance itself, so the movements that you want to focus on. And then we come to when can we do dance? So dance is the only subject to be in 2 key learning areas. So we have dance as a strand in PE, and we have dance as a strand in creative arts. I feel like dance in PE is slightly different. It's more about the actual movements, not so much the appreciation. So creative arts dance is what I'm talking about today. Creative arts dance can be incorporated into any key learning area. So my idea that I wanted to bring to you today was HSIE and how we can incorporate how can we incorporate dance into HSIE. So my group came up with the idea of refugees, which is quite a relevant topic at the moment. And there's a wealth of resources out there on refugees that are appropriate for a primary school classroom. So we set up our lesson to begin with looking at a picture book. Either Zeba Came on a Boat or The Little Refugee by Ando, or any of those books out there that you already know of, but something that's got really vivid imagery. So you want the students to focus on a particular page after reading the book for enjoyment a few times and discussing any key terms and the power relationships within the story. So you want the students to already have a base understanding of the story, but hopefully through this dance lesson they will get a deeper insight into the story and the idea behind refugees. So we had an image with a little boat and big waves around it. So first of all, we wanted students to do a walk around the room as a general warm-up, thinking about, okay, well, what does cold look like? So they would be doing cold movements. Or what does powerful look like, and strong? So they would be walking with strong movements. Or what does timid movements look like? So they might be creeping down a bit smaller and they'd be taking smaller steps. So you want the students to start thinking about the key words and the key ideas and relationships within the story. So following that, we would have the students work together in partners or in groups, first of all, actually. So students would work together in groups, and you would say, okay, I want 3 people in a group. So the students would find 3 people, and I want you to show me strong and scared. So you'd have someone in the group showing a strong pose and someone in a scared pose. So it's like a frozen tableau. So we're borrowing from drama. But the way that we're going to manipulate it is in your final practice, after you've done it a few times in different groups, we'd focus on, okay, well, in 8 counts, we're going to melt and we're going to grow and change into the other person. So you would have the person of the lower power status, so the small refugee with the strong, maybe antagonist in the home country of the refugee looking over them. Then you have 8 counts for them to experiment how they can slowly swap their roles and change. So it's a really good way for a safe improvisation, and you can get quite creative with it. You can bring pieces of music to stimulate it. You can increase the counts. You might say, okay, you have to include a turn to get to the ground now, or something like that. So you can build upon that idea further. From there, we get to the development of the dance. So we initiated the dance, or we felt that we would start with the students on a boat. So students will be huddled in a boat and you would feel the waves. So we believe that the students should be all crouched down in a clump and they would start rocking. And then we can start rocking further, and then we can grow a little bit taller, and then the dance can get a bit more, instead of timid at the start, you can reflect the movement of the boat and the waves, and the students can change to their dynamics to be sharp and rough like the waves. So once we'd had a sequence built, maybe 16 counts, then the students would have their turn to manipulate it based on a different part of the story, or maybe as a contrast. So what should the dance look like now once the refugees settled in Australia and they're happy, or maybe they're not happy, maybe they're experiencing racism. So there's plenty of avenues that you can build from there, which is enhancing our dance experience. We're getting a really rich dance experience, but at the same time, it's also offering a new insight into quite a contentious and relevant issue in Australia today. So that is our insight in how we would incorporate dance into HSIE. There's multiple ideas out there, so you just need to know where to look. Or maybe this channel might have some in the future. So that's the end of my vlog for Creative Arts. This is my last post that will be marked. Hopefully in the future I'll continue it on and it can actually be quite a good resource for teachers out there. That's my aim. So I will be keeping this online, but this is my final Creative Arts vlog for University of Sydney and my degree. So thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed the classes. So thank you.